Welcome to the Independence Day episode. Today we're talking about the upgraded infantry rocket launcher. The Army and the Marine Corps agreed to start acquiring large numbers of the Carl Gustaf recoilless rocket launcher. My favorite part of this upgraded weapon system is actually the fire control system. This new optic, combined with the new munition, are really what takes this system to the next level because, honestly, a whole lot hasn't changed with the launcher side of things. Like when you look at firearms development, there's a ton of new designs and changes to how guns improve their firing mechanisms. But when you talk about rocket launchers, the launcher side hasn't changed that much since the 1940s. It's still basically a barrel. The capabilities changes are mostly going to revolve around the science of the rocket. The M72 LAW, for instance, has been in service in the Marine Corps since the Vietnam War, and to this day, it's pretty much the same thing. They just slapped a Picatinny rail system on it. I swear to God, I'm gonna make a tactical t-shirt with a Picatinny rail system sewn onto the sleeves, and I'm gonna sell it to the DoD for $4 billion and finally be able to move out of my dad's basement. I'm a huge fan of military history, so I'm excited to tell you about this episode's sponsor. Rise of Kingdoms is a free-to-play mobile app that puts you completely in control of the army and logistics of an ancient military. There are 11 unique civilizations to choose between, including Rome, China, and France. Each country has its own development tree and architecture, so you can forge new upgraded weapons like the legendary Excalibur or the sharp longsword for your Roman legionaries. I chose China because I wanted to play as their commander, Sun Tzu. I own his book, The Art of War. I never read it, but I keep it on my shelf so I look cool when people come visit. Sun Tzu has his own unique units, special advantages, and powerful weapons, like the China Blade. Unlike some real-time strategy mobile game, in Rise of Kingdoms, your troops' units are completely unrestricted, so you can change direction whenever and wherever you want during a battle. This was my chance to put some of those flanking maneuvers to the test. Other strategies I learned were the containment and the wild goose matrix, as well as the wolf trap tactic. Download now by clicking the link in the description below. You might be asking, what do we need this rocket launcher for? You might be saying, hey, the enemy we've been fighting hasn't been rolling around in armored vehicles, but you'd be forgetting about the future threats, which the Pentagon calls near-peer adversaries. They're thinking 2 wars ahead of you here. Since about 2014, the so-called new Cold War has been amping up. All the intelligence reports indicate we will be likely up against armored units again in the near future. But even if that doesn't happen, we'll go over why the Carl Gustaf will potentially save the military a ton of money in engagements in Afghanistan. In this video, we'll learn about the upgraded version of the Carl Gustaf recoilless rocket launcher and the completely new munition type called the THERMOBARIC warhead, which has some crazy effects on target that make it even more relevant in a place like Afghanistan. So the Carl Gustaf is quickly becoming the standard issue anti-tank weapon for the US infantry. Well, it's anti-anything you put it in front of, really. It was originally developed in 1948 by the Swedish company called SAAB BOFORS Dynamics, and they decided to give the launcher a really weird name like all the other rocket launchers in the 1940s, like the American bazooka, which was nicknamed after a musical instrument, or the German Panzerfest, which I can only assume means soccer party. The Carl Gustaf falls under the category of weapons called recoilless rifles, which means it's designed to fire a countermass from the rear of the weapon right when you fire it. So it's not like there's no recoil, it just means the recoil is counteractive. It's shooting high velocity rocket propellant out the back as the projectile is flying forward. This forward thrust counteracts the recoil of the rocket. The upside to this system is it won't knock you back 50 meters when you fire it, which is basically what would happen if someone played the world's least funny prank on you by closing the backblast rocket of the tube. The downside is you're prohibited from firing it indoors. You have to make sure no one is standing behind you if you want them to stay alive. Picture standing behind a jet engine when it takes off. Yeah. Another downside is that by venting the exhaust out the back, that's the very part of the system that allows it to be portable, but it's also what makes it lose energy. So your max effective range is going to be decreased in these systems. So herein lies the design challenge the portable rocket launchers have been up against for the past 6 decades. They've been trying to solve the problem of how to improve accuracy and distance. The technological upgrades have been taken from its dumb fire origins to making it possible for rocket launchers to become like portable artillery, hitting tanks 2,000 meters away instead of 200 meters away. I'm talking about the laser-guided rocket munition, which just recently came out last year and is developed by Raytheon. So the CARL is an 84mm rocket system, and some of the new rocket munitions utilize a two-stage booster, which first fires a small boost of propellant which isn't powerful enough to hurt a user who fires it indoors. This solves the confined space issue. So with this type of munition, you can shoot it indoors because that first burst isn't so intense. The second, stronger boost is fired once it's already on its flight path. This is what gives it that greater accuracy to its target. As they continue to test this new round's capability, this is where they're finding that it can hit armored tanks at well over 3,000 meters away. So, what's up with the new explosive types, and what's a thermobaric explosive? The term means the explosion of the rocket uses the oxygen from the air around it to generate a high temperature explosion. They're meant to clear out foxholes, tunnels, bunkers, and caves, which is exactly why these rockets are so popular with the US forces in Afghanistan. The US Army just recently acquired 1,000 of these rocket launchers, and it costs $20,000 per unit, not including the ammo price tag, of course, which can run you between $500 to $3,000 depending on the round type. The maximum effective distance will vary here widely depending on a few factors. If you're aiming to hit a moving armored vehicle, you should be good up to 400 meters, and the reason for this is because of the relatively low speed that the rocket moves at. So when you're tracking where to fire, you can only really judge by about 400 meters out. When the enemy is stationary, it is effective to 500 meters with the standard rockets. The rocket reaches a muzzle velocity of 255 meters per second, just slow enough for you to see it fly through the air if you have perfect vision. If you're wondering if we'll talk about the Javelin anti-tank system in this video, the answer is no. The Javelin told me it didn't want to be lumped in with a bunch of filthy rocket launchers. When you look at the Carl Gustaf at first glance, the first impression of the thing is that it looks more unwieldy than the AT-4 and the old LAW, which are two of the other popular US military rocket launchers. The sizable handle and front grip make it difficult to carry around on your back, but here's the advantage to having a heavier, more durable design. The Carl Gustaf is reusable, whereas the AT-4 is a fire and forget system. I call it a one-night stand rocket launcher for that reason. The new optic that it uses is really impressive. In the past, the probability of having a first-time hit wasn't that great. The Mark 153, for instance, had a gun attached to the side of the rocket that fired a 9mm tracer round that was uniquely designed to match the ballistics of the rocket. So you would first fire that to see where you'd hit, and then you'd have to fire the actual rocket, which sounds like a nightmare because you're standing up, exposing yourself to fire, and shooting twice, and hoping that the enemy doesn't see you in this whole process. Today's rocket launcher uses an optic which can store up to 50 different ballistic algorithms. It automatically compensates for the ballistic drop of projectiles at different distances. It factors in variables like rotational spin and drift, the propellant temperature, and the terrain angle. The system also accounts for moving targets by calculating the point of aim depending on the speed of the target you're trying to hit, which is insane. They're starting to call these things fire control systems, and that's really what they are. It's part of what's going to make any of these weapons next generation and next level. The insurgents use an 82mm recoilless rocket and machine guns to ambush US forces from around 900 kilometers away. The US forces use a TTP of firing a Javelin rocket to pinpoint where the fire was coming from because the Javelin has a great thermal sight for that, and they're able to end the ambush quickly that way. However, there's only one drawback to doing that. Those things are expensive, $200,000 per shot. So they're out there shooting 82mm rockets that cost probably $12.50, and they're all from the 1970s, and we're firing in response a $200,000 rocket that just doesn't scale. So the Carl Gustaf is meant to fill a gap between the Javelin and the AT-4. So which rocket launcher would I rather have, the Carl Gustaf or the AT-4? That depends on the mission. I definitely prefer it to the Mark 153, which is heavier and has less range, and can only fire half the amount of rockets per minute. A proficient soldier can get off 6 rounds per minute. The advantage with the weapon system is it's relatively lightweight as far as reusable rocket launchers go, at about 15 pounds. You have to make sure that you look behind you and yell backblast area clear and get confirmation that it's clear before firing, because you can injure someone that's standing behind you up to 30 meters back because of the shockwave. And the Army would likely field 1 per platoon, while the Marines, true to form, are seeking to have 1 in every single squad. Remember to download the free-to-play mobile app Rise of Kingdoms. Join the Alliance today to fight others with a unique set of weapons to choose from. Download Rise of Kingdoms by using the link in the description below. Civilization is calling you. Immortalize your journey today and become eligible for the $250 Spartan armor giveaway. It looks like if you didn't have to deal with rocket launchers before in your unit, you're gonna have to learn them now. So please just remember your rocket launcher etiquette, be polite, and always make sure your back blast area is clear. Let us know what you think of the Carl Gustaf. How does it stack up against the Mark 153, the AT4, the M72 LAW? Let us know in the comment section below. I'm Chris Cappy, Task and Purpose out.